So far, all of the CSS rules we've been creating are internal rules, which means that they are specific to a particular document. CSS rules can also be applied externally or linked to an external file, and even inline. External style sheets are quite powerful because you can have one external style sheet with several CSS rules and have that one file point to multiple web pages. This provides for fast and powerful editing across multiple web pages. Let me show you how this works. I have the external_css.html file already open on my computer. And over here in our CSS styles panel, we can see that an internal style sheet in Dreamweaver is indicated by this style tag, if you will. And then if you open the disclosure triangle, you can see all of the CSS rules that are defined. Now, in the code view, we will also see in the header portion of our document that the CSS rules are defined way up here. So you could correlate each one of these, and you'll notice that as I click on each one of these selectors, you can see that Dreamweaver is selecting the appropriate selector in the CSS rules panel. In addition, all of the properties of each rule are defined underneath here. So this gives you a quick overview of how the code looks, and as you become more proficient in Dreamweaver, you may decide to add your rules manually in code view. It is quite fast, and once you understand the syntax, you'll be able to just plug these in very quickly and easily. Now, what I'd like to do, however, I'm going to switch to design view, is the navigation portion of this web page is fairly complex, and it goes a little bit beyond the scope of this video training session, but what I'd like to do is still get the visual look and feel of the navigation. So what I've done is I've moved those rules to an external file so that we can link to it in this web page. So we could do this quite easily. What I'm going to do over here in the CSS styles panel, up to this point, we've been using this new CSS rule button, but we also have one to the left of it called Attach Style Sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that link button, and it's going to ask me where the file lives. So we'll click the Browse button, and we'll navigate to our Chapter 4 folder. And if you scroll down, you're going to see a file called jummy_styles.css. And that contains all of the CSS rules for the navigation area of my web page. So it's going to be relative to this document. We'll go ahead and click Open. And we're going to add this as a link in this example. So we're going to make sure the link radio button is chosen. And when we click the OK button, you're going to notice that, voila, our navigation is now intact. Now, the beauty of CSS rules and the beauty of HTML and CSS as a general rule is that you always have the cliff notes right in front of you. So if you're curious and you're wondering, well, how did that happen? How did they format that navigation to make it look the way it does? You have all of the cliff notes right here in the jummy_styles.css file. And if you click on the disclosure triangle, you'll see that there are quite a few selectors in there making this happen, making the magic work, if you will. But I also want to point out that now that we have a style that's attached or linked to this document, you'll also notice that even in design view, up here at the very top, you have this jummy_styles.css. And if you click on it, that's actually going to show you this is going to go into split view at first, but it's going to show you the code of the file. So you can come in here and you can say, oh, okay, I see how this was done. These are all the properties that are making up that navigational area. You can even click on the source code button, and that will switch you back to the code of the HTML file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to design view, and we want to make sure that we save our document. So you can choose File, Save. And then you can analyze this a little bit more. Now, one other thing I want to do, however, a pretty good general practice is that when you are working with CSS, you generally want the external style to be applied before the internal style. Because when you're working with CSS, there are many times where you may have duplicate CSS selectors, for example, in H1. And in CSS rules, the way that this works is the last rule applied wins. So if I have a H1 defined in my internal style sheet and an H1 defined in the external style sheet, because right now the external style sheet is being applied last, and you can see this consecutively from top down, that one is going to win over the internal style sheet. So I'd like to change that. Now, logic would tell you that I should be able to click on this and just drag it up here and change the order, but Dreamweaver doesn't always want to allow me to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch to code view, and this is really easy to fix. You can see that right here is the link tag for the CSS file that we just linked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that, and I'm going to come up here to the edit menu, and I'm going to choose cut to just get rid of it. And then we'll just scroll up here to the top before the internal style sheet begins. I'll just put my cursor after the title tag, press return, and then choose edit paste. And what that's going to do, you can see over here in the CSS styles panel, because I edited the code, it wants me to refresh this. So we can do that by just pressing F5 or clicking the refresh button. And now I can see that the external style sheet is applied first and then the internal style sheet. And that's exactly what I want. So as you can see, external style sheets can really streamline a website by providing an efficient way to make changes and updates to all pages that are linked to that external style sheet.